I got to go on a few morning walks with him there in Hawaii. He'd go to Magic Island and walk out there, and you can get out to the point where you can see the surfers, because it goes way out, and the surfers right there. And he stood there one day and he said, they're sea sufferers. They're preparing to take sharks and dolphin bodies. And then another day he said, like a day or two after that, he said, they have mystic power, they're walking on water. I cannot do that. There is a lot of nice stories actually in Hawaii. He walked through the prasadam room and he saw a grain of rice on the floor. And he said, whoever has spilled that rice will have to suffer. That's Krishna. Prasadam should not be wasted. Another time, Sukadeva was cooking for Prabhupada. And he was by his desk. You should probably get some pastimes from Sukadeva. He tells the story real well. But he caught a bug, and he asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, what should I do with this bug? And Prabhupada said, take him to the window. And so, Sukadeva says, who can you ask anybody else what to do with a bug? They'd think you're crazy, but Prabhupada, you could ask him anything like. And, so they asked him if they could spray the cockroaches in the temple. And Prabhupada said, no, it's simply you're unclean, you're lazy, so you don't want to clean. So you want to just leave it dirty, then just keep killing the cockroaches. So he didn't want, unless it was this, extreme, really extreme emergency, he didn't want. And that reminds me of another story in Bombay. I just became Prabhupada's servant, and Tamal was asking him, what about mosquitoes? Can we kill mosquitoes? And Prabhupada said, only if they're biting you. If they're biting you, you can kill them, but before that, you can't kill them.
There was one occasion when we were flying from Singapore to Australia, and Hari Suri was his personal servant at the time. They were seated up in the first class section, and I was seated in the back in the coach section. And the plane must have hit an air pocket or something, and it seemed to drop very, very quickly, maybe 5,000 or 10,000 feet, it seemed like. My stomach was in my head, that's all I could think of. And it was like going down a roller coaster, but it was a huge roller coaster because it just continued for about 5 or 10 seconds. And I remember getting up, and I was pretty shaken, although I was chanting at the time. And walking up to Srila Prabhupada in the front cabin and asking him if he was all right. And he looked like nothing had happened at all. And I asked Srila Prabhupada, are you okay? And Srila Prabhupada said, yes, we can die at any time.
The first day that I assisted Srila Prabhupada in the kitchen was for my sister's wedding in New York. And Srila Prabhupada cooked in a very small galley kitchen in his New York apartment, both sides counters. And he gave me the singular task of making a very difficult preparation called aloo kachori, which is still my Waterloo, because it's one of the most complex pastries to cook properly. It has to cook for a long time without becoming greasy, and that's almost impossible. It's like the elephant through the eye of a needle at the best of circumstances. But because the stuffing for this is mashed potatoes, it is even more difficult. If it's a pea kachori that can blow up like a stuffed puri, then it's easy. This is very difficult. So for nearly 8 hours, I was given that singular task of making aloo kachoris, while Srila Prabhupada cooked a 14-course feast for the wedding single-handedly in his kitchen. And in the course of cooking that feast, I made so many mistakes from the very first day in his service. The first mistake I made was I had a very short skirt on and little t-shirt and sitting cross-legged, and I said, Swamiji, may I have a cigarette? And he popped his head out the corner and he said, "Go wash your hands." So I went and washed my hands. And so then he explained the 4 principles in Krishna consciousness. 4 prohibitions: and no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex life, no intoxication. So then, short time later, I said, "Swamiji, may I have a glass of water?" And he said, "Go wash your hands." So then he explained the first and simple, foremost principle in cooking is to engage the senses in the service of the Lord, and to cook for Krishna with love and devotion, and not think about our senses, our tongue, our sense of smell, the belly. This is cooking for Krishna. So then short time later I said, "Swamiji, it's very hot in here." I was wiping perspiration. "Go wash your hands." So then he began a little bit, the simplest principles, rudimentary principles of external cleanliness. And then he explained just the simplest touch of internal cleanliness. By balancing both of them, are we able to engage in the idea of serving Krishna through this art of cooking. So all 3 things, first day in the kitchen.
I used to be a real fancy chamra fanner. I'd do the cheddar, I'd get up there, and I thought I was the best chamra guy. And so then that's what I was doing for Prabhupada in the garden. 2 or 3 hours every morning I'd fan him with the chamra. And so one morning, Prabhupada, he had 3 sets of japa beads, a little one, a medium one, and a real big one. And we had them all there by his house, and he'd pick out whatever one he wanted that day. So he was sitting there chanting, and his eyes were shut, and a fly landed right above his lip here. And I thought, oh, what am I going to do? So I took my finger and I got real close to him without touching him, and I was going like that, but the fly just kept walking around, and he wouldn't leave. And so after a minute, Prabhupada opened one eye and looked at me, and I jumped back a little bit, because I was kind of close to him. And he said, "You are fanning around the world, but you can't get the fly off my face. Give me that chamra." And so he took the chamra, and he said, "Do like this," and he fanned it right on his face. And so a few minutes later, it happened again, a fly landed, and I was a little bit hesitant, but I brushed it on his face, and then he nodded and said, "Yes, very nice."
So we were flying from Mauritius to Durban, and it was a Qantas airline that was coming from Perth, Australia, and there was some type of a rugby match that had taken place with the South African and New Zealand teams at that time, and there were a lot of rugby types on the plane, and we had a seat in the non-smoking section, and I was seated beside Srila Prabhupada, and there I was with my little British hat and shirt and coat and pants, and people were smoking in the non-smoking section, and of course I was disturbed by it because I didn't like it, but I was also concerned for Srila Prabhupada's welfare, and so I asked one of the stewardesses, could you please ask them to not smoke? This is the no smoking section. So she informed the rugby type guys who were drinking quite a bit as well to stop smoking, and of course they didn't stop smoking. So I again went to inform the stewardess, can you please ask them again? And Prabhupada stopped me. He said, "What is the difference between us and them if we can't tolerate these sort of things?" He said, "Don't be an ordinary, common, foolish man.